One of Ukraine's most important religious and cultural landmarks has been damaged during a Russian missile and drone attack on Kyiv. The target was the Kyiv-Pechersk Lavra, also known as the Monastery of the Caves, a UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of the most sacred places in Ukrainian Christianity. As explosions echoed across Kyiv overnight, images quickly spread across social media showing flames rising from the historic cathedral complex. For many Ukrainians sheltering from the attack, the images were deeply shocking. This was not just another building. For millions, the Lavra represents the spiritual heart of Ukraine. The Kyiv-Pechersk Lavra is one of the oldest and most important religious sites in Eastern Europe. Founded nearly 1,000 years ago, the monastery dates back to the era of Kievan Rus, the medieval state that both Ukraine and Russia consider part of their historical roots. The complex contains churches, monasteries, religious relics, artworks, and an underground network of caves stretching hundreds of meters beneath the ground. For centuries, pilgrims have traveled to the site. It is not only a religious center, but also a symbol of Ukrainian history, culture, scholarship, and identity. That is why damage to the Lavra resonates far beyond Kyiv. According to Ukrainian officials and church leaders, the roof of the Dormition Cathedral caught fire during the Russian attack. Videos and photographs showed firefighters battling flames as smoke rose above the cathedral complex. Church officials confirmed the damage shortly after the strike. Despite the attack, bells continued ringing across the monastery grounds as emergency crews worked through the night. At the same time, staff rushed to protect icons, religious artifacts, artworks, and historical treasures stored inside the complex. The full extent of the damage is still being assessed. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy strongly condemned the attack. He described the strike as one of Russia's most serious crimes against Christian culture since the beginning of the war. Zelenskyy visited the site alongside senior government officials as rescue operations continued. He also used the incident to call for greater international support, particularly stronger air defense systems capable of intercepting ballistic missiles and drones. According to Ukrainian authorities, protecting cultural heritage has become increasingly difficult as Russian attacks continue against cities across the country. For Kyiv, the strike represents not only a military attack, but also an attack on Ukraine's historical legacy. Religious leaders and government officials used unusually strong language after the attack. Metropolitan Epiphanius, head of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, called the strike a crime against humanity, history, and Christianity. Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko described the attack as evidence of what she called the true face of Russia's claimed Orthodox values. Ukraine's foreign ministry announced plans to seek urgent action through UNESCO and other international organizations. Officials argue that attacks on globally recognized cultural sites should trigger a stronger international response. For many Ukrainians, the strike carries emotional significance because the Lavra is seen as a living symbol of their nation's spiritual heritage. The attack quickly drew international attention. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot compared the strike to the bombing of Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. French President Emmanuel Macron also condemned the attack. He said nothing could justify an assault on what he described as part of humanity's shared cultural heritage. The comparison to Notre Dame helped many international observers understand the scale of the shock inside Ukraine. For Ukrainians, the Lavra holds a similar place in national memory and religious life. This attack is significant because of what the Lavra represents. The monastery was built during the era of Kievan Rus, centuries before Moscow emerged as a major political center. For many Ukrainians, it symbolizes a historical tradition rooted in Kyiv rather than Moscow. Because of that symbolism, any attack on the site is viewed as more than physical damage. It is seen as an attack on national identity, historical continuity, and cultural memory. Human rights advocate and Nobel Peace Prize recipient Oleksandra Matviichuk argued that the strike was deliberate and aimed at a site deeply connected to Ukraine's history. Russia has not presented evidence that the monastery was a military target. More than 4 years into the war, the conflict is no longer measured only in territory gained or lost. It is also being fought over history, culture, identity, and national memory. The damage to the Kyiv-Pechersk Lavra has become one of the most powerful symbols of that struggle. Ukraine says the monastery will be rebuilt, but the attack has already become another flashpoint in a conflict that increasingly extends beyond the battlefield. For Kyiv, the strike was not simply an attack on a building, it was an attack on one of the foundations of Ukrainian identity itself. This is APE-R Network. Thank you for watching.